Hello, Jamie here with JGenerator 3D. Today we're going to do a tutorial on modelling your own mannequin type character. So just a really easy, simple character to model. And we're also going to put a rig on the model. A nice easy rigify rig, which is a part of Blender. There's plenty of tutorials. I've done one previously on how to use rigify. So we'll just set it up really easily and don't have to worry about any deformations or anything like that. With a mannequin sort of character, you just want sort of blocky chunks for each section of the body. And yeah, we'll have it all rigged up, and it should be really easy to do. So first of all, we'll get a reference image, and we'll put that in the background. So we'll open up the background images tab in the properties panel and just click add image here, and I'll just go to my desktop where I've got an image saved. I'll put a link in the description as to where I got that image from, and it's just a simple, as you see, just a simple male body image, and it just gives us the proportions that we need. There's not too much detail or anything on there. So we'll just go and set this to be just on the front view, and then we'll line up this blue center line with the center line that's on the reference by clicking and dragging on this box here. So that gets it pretty close. If we zoom in and just press Z to go into wireframe mode for that to see through that box, and if I hold shift and then left click on here, it allows me to fine tune that movement and get smaller degrees of movement as I slide my mouse around. That gives me a pretty good image orientation. So we'll also make it so that he's standing on this red line as well. So that's just sort of the general orientation that you want your model to be, and the location in the world as well. When you're making a character, again we'll zoom in and we'll just fine tune it so that it's just a little bit better placed. There we go, that's better. So we'll do the same thing in the right hand side. So just numpad 3 to go to the right side, add another image, we'll shrink that one down, we'll use the exact same image again, and we'll slide it up first time, up onto the green line here. So if you're new to Blender and 3D in general, the green line represents the y-axis, blue line represents the z-axis, and in the front view the red line that goes along here represents the x-axis. So our left to right axis now is the x-axis, and up and down is z, and then in the side view we're now looking at the y-axis, and the z-axis is up as well. So Blender is a Z-up world, and then we'll just fine tune this again to make this line match up to the line that's on the reference. Just be careful not to move your mouse when you're clicking and letting go of the mouse button, as you can accidentally move the mouse a little bit, especially when you're doing fine tuning. Okay, so we're good to start modeling. So we'll go into the front view first, and we need to make sure that we set this to just right hand side view so that we're only seeing the one that we want to see. And we'll start by just we'll actually delete this cube because we don't want to start off with a cube. We'll add in, so Shift A, add in a cylinder. I'm just going to make it 6 vertices around, bring the radius down, bring the depth down, and I'm going to just set it to nothing on the end. So I'll just tab into edit mode now, and with it selected, we'll press G for move, and just move it into place. R to rotate, and we just sort of want to get that bottom part of the leg, and then we'll just B for box select, and then S for scale to bring that in. Cool. And we'll go Control R for a loop cut, and we'll just bring it in to about there, and again S to scale up, And then we'll bring one more loop cut in here, just so there's that little bit of detail, and put it into place. So you don't need to worry about details like the ankle and all that sort of stuff. We're just going to have sort of the minimum amount of detail that we need just to have the shapes look fairly representative of what they're supposed to be. So we'll go into the right hand side view now, and we'll see how it's not lining up with anything in here, so we'll fix that now. So Alt right click will select a ring of vertices. So we'll move it into place, and I'll do S and then Y to constrain the scaling to the Y axis. I'm actually going to bring these two vertices in on the Y axis a bit first before I move anything else, just because the front of your leg where your shin is a little bit flatter than the big round back where the calf is. So just make it look a bit more realistic, and that should be fine there. Those are pretty good sizes. We could move this one up a bit, maybe rotate a bit, just to get that sort of bulging calf muscle shape. So if we look in solid view, got this little lower leg thing going on. We probably want to bring these back a little bit and scale them down a bit. There we go. And we'll just lastly, we'll put a cap on the ends here. So the reason why I turned off the initial cap was because the caps can be, when they come in as an n-gon or just triangles, they can just be a bit annoying to work with when you want some specific things. So I'm just going to connect these two vertices here with F, and then Alt right click everything to select the whole loop here, and just press F to fill. We'll go into the front view, and now I can just move this edge up a little bit, and it just gives us a little bit of a curve at the top. And I think that looks a bit better than just a flat edge. But with an n-gon we'd have to just delete the n-gon and then rebuild all that, or with triangles the same sort of thing, so it's just easier to start off without. And then we'll do the same at the bottom as well. So we'll just select those two, F to fill, Alt right click, F, and that's all filled in, and we'll bring these two up, and it just rounds off that bottom bit as well, just looks a little bit better. Okay, so we'll do the rest of the leg. So we'll do the top part of the leg first, and then we'll do the foot. So we'll just duplicate with Shift D, and we'll S and then X to scale everything in the X axis. Just move it into place a bit, and then we'll just select this loop, S and then X. And I've got a fairly good looking shape there. So we go into the side view, and if you just Z to go into in and out of wireframe mode, so we'll want to make sure that this is nice and chunky like the actual reference. So S and then Y, and we'll bring this out a little bit more. S and then Y. So you'll notice I keep moving things sort of towards the center of the mass, and then doing my scaling, because the scaling does work in both directions at the same time. So that allows me to meet up with the reference on both sides quickly. I'll just select here, and I've selected a vertex here, so I can just press B and then middle mouse click and then let go after I've dragged over that, and that will deselect. So S and then Y. So it should match up fairly closely. That looks pretty good to me. So a big thigh and then a calf. Now we'll do a foot. So we'll start off with just a cube, I think, for the foot, and just S to scale down. So that was Shift A to add. Alternatively, you can use the add menu in the bottom here, and I'll just move this to be the sort of main section of foot here. Bring that in a bit. And then we'll E to extrude. I want to go almost to where the toes are. Bring that down about there, that looks pretty good. And then E to extrude again, and I'll just right click to cancel the transform, and then just straight out in the y-axis because I know that's where I want it to go. So that's a very basic foot shape, and then in the front we're going to want to make it a bit wider, and we'll want to rotate that whole thing out as well. So press L with the mouse hovering over something to select linked, and then just R to rotate. That should match it up fairly closely with that reference, like that. Now I'm noticing it's a bit chunky and blocky compared to everything else, so we'll do a loop cut here, and then a loop cut here. So this one, we'll do a quick little scale in the y-axis just over that whole loop. I'll just add a bit of rounding to things. I'm also going to select these 4 edges, these 6 vertices. Scale them down to sort of match the size of the bottom of the leg. That's a bit more, so it matches up really. I'll select these vertices and just move them down to soften that. These vertices, I'll scale in the x-axis a little bit. I'm not being too precise with my transforms because I'm not too worried about having it look perfect. That doesn't look any good. I think these back ones need to come in a bit. You see how things are sort of leaning off. I don't want that too bad. Okay. Just scale that all down a little bit. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to want to separate this toe section off so that I can have a nicely animatable toe. As it will look a bit weird just having a foot that doesn't bend at all. To do that, I'm just going to alt right click on this edge loop. You'll see just that little edge loop is selected, and then I press V, and so V will tear, and it will select based on where your mouse is. So my mouse was to the left of that tear, so it's selected everything on that left side. I'm just going to right click to cancel that transform and just move in the y-axis a little bit, and then connect these 2 vertices here, alt right click, F to fill, and then the same on the other piece there. So then we've got faces in there, so when things start to move, so for instance that bends out like that, you've still got geometry in there to sort of make things look solid. Just undo that. So now that we've got a leg in place, we will add in a mirror modifier, and that will allow us to only have to model half of the body at once. So we'll go into the modifier panel here, and then under add modifier, under generate, you want mirror, and that creates us this mirror. Now we want to probably start off after doing the mirror by going and doing the torso. Again, the torso we'll do in 2 sections. So we'll do the top section down to the bottom of the rib cage here, because that's a solid section, and then the bottom of the torso we'll have as a separate section as well, just so we've got a little bit more movement in there as well, sort of like the toe, but we do want it to match up and sort of look like one cohesive piece. So even though you can see, even though the toe is separate, it looks like it's all part of the same foot. So we'll start off with another cylinder, I think, because the body is a rounded shape. I'll just hit Shift S and move my cursor to the center, and then Shift A, mesh, cylinder. We'll leave these default values, and actually I'll delete that and make sure we're in edit mode in this object, and then add in that cylinder. Now if we move the cylinder away from the center, you'll see that it's all mirrored. And what we'll do is we'll turn on clipping, and then we will delete these two vertices here, and the two behind them. We'll go back actually and show you the proper way to do that. So if you press Z and go into wireframe, and then select those. So when you're in wireframe, you select everything that's behind as well as what you can see. And then with clipping on, we will select this and just move it towards the center, and you'll see it meet up and then start to shrink. So this is where the clipping is taking into effect the plane of the mirror, and that essentially makes the vertices stick together, anything that's along the middle, which is quite useful. So if we now try to, after we've moved it into place, if we now try to move it away, those vertices have now stuck to that mirror, and they won't move from that central plane, but you can still move them up and down. So we'll model the body as the torso as one whole piece. So we'll bring that probably just down to where the legs are, and leave this sort of just about halfway up the neck, because we won't model in a separate neck. I've done this a few times and I find that the neck doesn't seem to look very good in this sort of style of model, which is fine. So we'll just bring this out here, bring the shoulders out all the way, or almost all the way, and we'll do a cut in the middle, approximately where we want that middle section to be, and move those vertices in, and then we'll add in another cut for the torso here, just to round that out a bit. And I feel pretty good about the waist. I might bring these vertices in a bit and just add in a little rounder cut. Maybe bring this down a bit more. Okay, so we'll just go into the side view and line things up. So first off we'll go here, we'll scale that down a fair bit, because that's sort of our neck area. You'll see the dotted line here, that's representative of where the actual back goes. So we can see that we might want to bring these vertices up a bit, and those ones out a bit, like that. And you can think of the torso as having three separate planes. So you've got the front plane, the back, and then the side. So that's why I went with a cylinder as my starting base mesh. And that just allows me to get the exact shape that I want. So bring these down a bit. Okay, so we'll select these four vertices and press F to fill. And then these four vertices and press F to fill as well. So we've filled in those top sections. So we've got a torso going on there. Again, we'll separate. We'll bring these down a little bit just so they match up with there. Maybe bring this one up a bit for that shape. And then V to tear. Again, it tears on the side of where the mouse is. I'll just right click and just bring that straight down a bit. And then just the four vertices and F to fill, and then these four vertices and F to fill. So we've got that section to torso. I feel like this could be up a bit higher. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, so for the head, again we'll make sure that our cursor is in the center, so Shift S and then cursor to center. We'll go again with the cylinder, quite happy with how that's working out. And this time, without moving anything all the way, I'll just delete those vertices on the left hand side and bring these down and start to align things up with the shape of the head. We'll sort of ignore that the hair's there and just go a little bit below the hair and on the side. So we'll want to fill in F to fill, and then F to fill, and just bring these back. So the references aren't perfect, but they're pretty good. You'll notice how these two vertices were much further under the hairline or the top of the hair, whereas in this side they're actually right on that line that defines where the hair is. There's no big deal. We won't worry about that. So we'll add in two cuts. So it's Control R, so we'll add one there, and just right click to have it dead on in the center, and then right click there. And that way we've got just a little bit of extra shape for the head. So we'll bring that in like that. I'm trying to select that. There we go. Might bring that one down. I'll just give the hint of like the front shape of the front of the head. Bring that out a little bit. Just so we've got this sort of it's basically just a little ball, but it's shaped how we want. Now we'll actually select all of these vertices and ignore this one that's in the middle. Just bring them in on the x-axis, and that will just make a nice rounded shape as well. That looks quite good to me. It does look a little bit small, so just select everything there with L for linked. I'm going to scale up a bit. Now when you scale with something mirrored, it doesn't take into account that it's mirrored, so you get more of a vertical scale than you do a horizontal. So to compensate for that, I'll just move it out in the x-axis a little bit. And that looks pretty good to me. So just lastly, we'll put in the arms. Again, working with cylinders, because they're the general shape of an arm. So, and we won't worry about having the cursor in the center, we'll just move it over to the side here. So Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder. And Blender does obviously remember those settings from previously, so we don't have to keep redoing the same settings over and over again, which is nice. And again, I've done it again, so make sure you have the model selected and you're in edit mode. It's just so we can make use of that mirror modifier and keep everything together. So we'll do the forearm first. We'll go into a wireframe mode, scale down that end, move this to where the elbow is and scale down that. Control R for a loop cut and just scale that one up a bit. Let's go into the side view. It's starting to get a little bit cluttered with all the vertices, but it's not too bad. And that looks pretty good actually. We might just scale this down a little bit in the y-axis here. And maybe bring this one down a little bit as well. And then, as before, we'll fill in those with a couple of quads. And just round off the ends a bit as well. Cool. So for the arm, we'll just do the bicep or the tricep. I can't remember which is which. Scale up a bit. Now I'll scale this down a little bit more, just so that it does match the sort of size of that part there. And I do feel like I want to add in another edge loop just here and scale up in Y a bit. No, that doesn't match there completely. I think that will be okay. Yeah, that looks fine. Now, we'll bring in this shoulder just a little bit, because that arm is doing a pretty good job of showing us where that shoulder bit should be. That looks pretty good. And lastly, we'll just add in a hand. So with the hand, we'll have the main sort of paddle part of the hand. We'll have the fingers as just one big chunk that's separate, and the thumb as one big chunk is separate. So sort of think of as a mitten sort of shape. And that will give us a little bit of sort of dexterity in the hand, but not too much. For the purposes of this, I don't feel the need to model each individual finger. I suppose you could if you wanted to, but for something that small, you're probably going to want to have deformation and stuff, which is not a part of this tutorial. So we will add in a cube, I think. Scale it down all the way. I'll just rotate a bit. Scale a bit more. And bring it up to there. Scale that down. So there's really not much to the hand. And then extrude. And just bring that down like that. So we'll go into side view. So it's a very skinny hand. So we'll just bring it into correct position. Bring these fingers out. Bring the end of that paddle up to there. And then just sort of maybe make this a little bit bigger than the end of the arm. About there. That looks pretty good. Yep, that will do. So we will separate this again. So we've got that bit of extra movement. I'll just Alt right click there, and Alt right click there, and then F to fill. So again we've got filled in polygons. And lastly, we will go Control Tab to go to face mode. Select just this face, and Shift D to duplicate. And I'm going to extrude, and I'll make sure I extrude basically in the way that this green arrow is pointing. That's sort of the way that the normals will work, I believe, or it's not. Is it the other direction? There we go. So in the opposite way to the Y, just to make sure that the normals are correct. And I can tell by just the colouring of the actual faces. You see how they're bluer and darker, whereas these ones are yellower and lighter, so I know that that's the way the normals are facing. And we'll just move this into place, and that should serve pretty well as a thumb, I think. Don't need to do too much to it. You don't want to anyway. Bring it down a little bit there. And maybe bring the tip in a little bit as well. Cool, that's a thumb. Okay. So the modelling portion is complete. So we've got a nice looking mannequin type model where each segment of the body, or each part of the body is just a different segment. And this makes it really easy to animate. We don't have to worry about deformations and weight painting and all that sort of stuff. We can just chuck this straight on top of a rig and it will start working. In order to sort of get the model into that final part, we will apply the mirror. So we'll click apply there, and what that does is it makes the rest of this mesh real. So it's now its own thing, it's editable, and when I move something on this side it doesn't affect this side, and conversely the same thing. So so now that's sort of made everything real rather than imaginary. Now I want each of these different segments to actually be its own object. So right now when I'm in object mode here, I can only just select and move the whole thing around at once. Now I will get rid of these background images, so I'll just click these two eyes because I don't need those anymore, and I'll just turn them off. So to separate everything into different objects, it's really easy. So we'll just tab into edit mode, press A to select all, and so we'll get everything highlighted in orange and all selected, all the vertices. Press P and then separate by loose parts, And so every single loose part is now its own object. So we'll make sure we tab into object mode, and then every piece is its own, which is quite nice. That's exactly what we want. Now we will select all of these and we'll go object, transform, and then origin to geometry. So now all these dots which were in the center, they're now around, or they're now in the center of each object, so that's quite good. So that's just the point around which the object moves, and it just helps to have them in the correct place for each object. Okay, now we might select this all, and the average man is about 2 meters tall. Now it's easier to use blender units as one blender unit is 1 meter. So these lightly coloured big squares, that's one blender unit, and then the smaller squares that you can see inside, you might not be able to see in the video, but those you'll be able to see in your own viewport. Those smaller squares, they represent of 1/10 of a blender unit. So we'll want to have it about 2 blender units tall. We'll go to transform and easily scale this down. We'll go Shift S, cursor to center, and then press period on the keyboard. And what that does is it tells the transforms of any selected object to rotate and move around the 3D cursor. So when we press S and scale down to about that tall, it just drags it all down towards that center of the world, which is where we built everything around. So it's quite good. We'll now press comma to make it so that we're transforming it just around the selected object now, and then we will add in a rig. The rig that we'll use is just rigify, as I said before. If you haven't got it enabled, just press Ctrl-Alt-U, or go File, User Preferences, and then come into your add-ons section here, and we'll just type in the top here rigify, and it has here rigging rigify, so we'll just enable that. Tick, there we go. Alternatively, you can come down here and choose rigging, and then rigify's there. It helps to save you as a setting, so that will be available next time you turn on Blender. And then we'll go Shift A, add armature, and we've now got this human meta rig, which we'll use. So now we'll just need to move the bones into position around where each part of our mesh is. We'll go to the armature tab here and just choose X-ray, and that makes it so that the bones are always visible no matter what orientation you're in. They're always visible above the mesh, so it's easy to see where they are. This is especially helpful for building the skeleton and putting it into place, as well as when it actually comes to animating. It means that the animation controls are always visible too, so that's quite helpful. So we'll tab into edit mode, and then that's with the armature selected. We'll go to, I believe it's options here, and just turn on X-axis mirror. This is the tool panel, so you press T to open that if you're unsure about that. And then it's as simple as just moving these bones into position as to where all of the sort of parts are. So we'll start again with the legs. So we'll go Z to go into wireframe mode and just move that foot into position. So just sort of where that ankle is about there. Move the knee and the hips. The tops of the thighs are pretty good. We want this bone to be right in the middle of that section there, so when we attach the model to the rig, then it will be in the correct deformation areas, or the correct sort of separation areas, I suppose is the best way to call it. Bring the clavicle up a bit, bring all this up, bring the elbow into the elbow part. Now there's a lot of bones here for the hand. We'll delete most of them and just keep the ones that we want to keep. That's pretty good from the front view. So we'll go into the side view, and again from the bottom to the top. Now I'm actually, because I'm in wireframe mode and because I've got the mirror on, I'm actually selecting the bone. Oh no, I'm selecting the bone closest. I thought I was selecting the bone behind, but irregardless, it moves the correct one. You just can't see that selection. Just bring that up a bit. Bring the elbow or the knee in. So generally you want the knee to actually be towards the front of the leg, not directly in the dead center, because that's not actually how your leg bends, basically. Doesn't have to be like sticking right out the front, but closer to the front than the center. That's pretty good. This one here. Just bring that forwards a bit, just into the center of the mass. That looks alright. We'll bring this back. And bring this back. Elbow in there. Okay, so that's the hand there. So we'll just select that whole hand, move it into sort of position. So this bone here is the hand bone. So that will be the main part of the hand. We will also keep the middle finger, I think, because that's probably the straightest. So we'll just press L whilst hovering over this bone, and that will select all the child bones as well. And just press X and then delete bones. And L over the ring finger, X delete bones, L over the ring finger, X delete bones. I'll keep the rest of the bones in those chains alive, just because I know that rigify gives you more controls. We won't necessarily use all of them, but having that chain there is can be helpful. Okay, so we've got the hand in place. That all looks pretty good. We'll just finish off with the head. So this bone here is your neck. So make sure this sort of select those two there. Bring those back. So not every bone is actually completely connected, and some of them are in the same spot and not connected, so we'll just move those together. And we'll move this one to the base of the head, and we'll make this one so it's pretty much straight up and down. Looks pretty good, and just bring it out to the top of the head as well. I like to have it just sticking out. So we've got that. Cool. Looking pretty good. Okay. I'm happy with that. Oh, except with the feet. Okay, we'll just fix that, please. Might help to go into the top view. And we'll select these and just rotate. So we want to keep those all in the same orientation. Maybe bring the toe out a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Wonderful. Okay. So we'll go tab into object mode, make sure just the armature is selected, and then under here it's got rigify buttons and then generate. So we want to click generate. Computer might take a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, and then it will open up with all of this. So this is the actual control rig for animating with, that's been generated based on the positions of the bones. It looks like there's a lot going on. We can actually make it a little bit easier to see by going under display, and then we'll just turn off relationship lines, so that can clutter the screen quite a bit. So you can sort of see that there's a control around the head, there's a control around the chest, control around the waist, around each section of the arm, and then there's a control for the fingers there, and the hand, and the feet, and the toes and things like that. The rigify is quite nice because it comes with all the inverse kinematics and all those on and off toggles automatically, so you don't have to worry about setting all that up yourself. And so we'll select the skeleton that we can still see protruding through. Oh, that armature there. So you might have to right click a few times to cycle through the selection. And then I'm just going to press M and move it to a separate layer because we're not actually going to be using that armature anymore. So we've got this one. So we will go into pose mode, so control tab, or alternately choose pose mode out of this drop down, and you can start to sort of play with the rig and see what's going on. What I'm going to do to actually parent things, turn on the X-ray, and then we'll click this button here. So this is armature layer visibility. I'm just going to turn on just this one. So this is the deformation bones. Typically they're more used for, you know, a character that's got a full character that's got all of their skin and everything, and then these deformation bones, and the way that they're set up, help to specifically make those deformations a bit better. But what they're good for also is just parenting objects too, and this way we can make sure that the objects are parented where we want them to be, and rather than parenting them to all these funny controls that we're not too sure what they might be, but we know what these are, and they're all in the correct positions as we set them up before. So to do this, we want to select the object and then hold down shift and select the bone, and it will look like this, and then we'll go Control P and then set parent just a bone, and just do this all the way down. Control P bone, Control P bone. It's really easy to set up. Control select the bone, Control P bone. And for these chains, just select the bottom of the chain, Control P bone. So that's the arm. We'll do the head, Control P and then bone. The chest, Control P. So shift select, Control P bone. The legs, or the leg, Control P bone, Control P bone. Do the foot, and then the toe. Can get a little bit confusing because it sort of remembers that old selection, so if you're not too sure, just press A to deselect everything that's currently selected, and then if everything highlights, then that means you previously had nothing selected, so just toggling A is select all, deselect all. So we select that, so I should select that one, Control P bone. So we'll go back up this leg, Control P. And again, with the joints and things, make sure you're parenting to the basically the bottom of the root of each section. So, because we've got these two bones in here, we only want the one that's actually going to be bending at the knee, not the one that would be bending in the middle of the leg. Okay, just the arm on this side left to do. And the hand. Okay. And if you've been following along, you should now have a completely rig character. So I'll just unselect this layer just by selecting any other layer. So I'll start at the top here. I'm just going to hold down shift and drag across these layers. And that should bring everything up to show again. Make sure we go into pose mode so everything looks nice. And that brings up basically all those layers that were still there. You've also got the rig layers here. And a couple ones I will turn off actually is I'll turn off the leg FK and I'll turn off the arm IK. And these tweak layers as well. So if I bring this out a bit more, you see how it's got tweak. So I don't want those to show, but I do want the root to show. So that's the main bone that will show us where the whole mesh is. And that's pretty good. So we've got all the controls there that we need. And we can start animating basically from here. As I'll see. So as you see, if you select any of these bones in pose mode and rotate, you'll see that they now control the whole thing, and each section actually follows the correct part that it's supposed to follow. So we'll select the 2 feet bones here to set up the IK. To do that, we'll turn on FK IK, so we'll switch that over to 1. So now the legs do their IK constraints, which are now turned on completely. So that means that the feet stay in place when you move anything else, and the rest of the bones in the leg track to, or they bend to make sure that they keep the shape right. So the bones don't, or they can stretch if you overextend, but otherwise the bones don't deform, which is quite nice. And if you move this control here, you can point where the knee will be. That's usually parented to the foot bone as well. Yep. So if you R and then Z, it will point that way you want to point it. In the foot, the control on the back here, if you rotate that, it will bend that foot. It's called a foot roll control, so you go from the back all the way forwards, so it works with a couple of bones. It's a nice effect. Or you can just control the bone with this control here. What it is helpful to do, once you've got your character set up, is to under the rig here, because everything's been parented to it, see all of these cylinders. So these are the actual objects that we created earlier when we were making the model, and because we just started off with a cylinder, it was named cylinder, and then when we separated into separate objects, it just did .001, .002, which is fine. But if we click and drag down here, it turns off selectable just on that arrow. The eye keeps it visible, otherwise you start turning off sections of your model, and the camera keeps it renderable. So we just don't want it to be selectable, because now what we want to do is just work with the rig and not work with the actual mesh pieces themselves. If you do want to select them again, you can turn all that on, or you can select them from this section here if you wanted to do some changes to any specific part, and that's fine. And then we can, if we like, we'll do a quick pose. So we'll add in we'll go into object mode, add in mesh, add in a cube, scale it down. So we'll just sit him on the edge of this cube, maybe scale it up a bit more. Yeah. Cool. So make sure in pose mode, and I'll select the hips and each of the feet, and that will allow me to move basically the whole thing independently. And I'll just move him so he's sitting there. Bring his feet out. Dangle his legs over the edge. Just bring him back a little bit. So it's nice and easy to set up a little pose. And then you can bring the arm in. So the arms just work on the forward kinematics, which is just where you basically select each bone and rotate it as you want. That's sort of the opposite to inverse kinematics. So you've got your forward is where you basically you don't have any constraints on it that are deciding where it goes. You're more in control of the exact pose of the bone. But it's not so helpful for when you want the feet to, or the end of the limb to stick to something. So if I want my feet to stick to the floor, it's a lot easier to use inverse kinematics, whereas arms are usually floating around. And you can animate these on and off, so if you want the character to pick something up, or do a handstand maybe, you'll then want the arms to be fixed to the ground, and then the legs sticking in the air. And having the forward kinematics is actually quite nice for getting a nice rotation in the arm. So I'm just moving the mouse left and right when I'm rotating that. Whereas with inverse kinematics, it's moving just the bottom of the leg, and the rest of the leg is trying to follow to where that foot is. So if I want a swinging action, forward kinematics is always a lot easier to get that effect. So there we have it, a little guy sitting on a ledge. We'll move the camera into position. Maybe turn that into a sun. Rotate it back. And just hit F12 and we've got a quick little render. So it's really easy to pose that character and start animating with them really. If you just want a simple character to pose with, then that's all you need to do. Animation obviously is another subject for another day, but yeah, I think that's a pretty good point to finish that tutorial. Please go on to my Facebook and Twitter and things and hit like this video if you did enjoy it and learn something. I try to be pretty concise with everything that I'm teaching and make sure that I tell people what buttons I'm pressing. So if there's anything that you think I missed, just give me a time code in the comments and say, hey, what did you press here? And I'll more than happy to tell you. I do have screencast keys on, but it doesn't always pick up every single button press, so you might have missed something, and that's just fine. I should have a Patreon set up, so jump onto there, and if you want to support me, that would be awesome. I'm happy to do shout outs and requests from Patreon supporters, and if can get a bit more popular, then maybe do some live streams, and Patreon supporters would be able to sort of dictate what I make on a live stream. I think that'd be really fun to do, so I'd like to get into that and maybe do that once a month or so. Again, if you've got any questions, ask in the comments. We'll make sure that we're replying to all of those, and just have a good time blending really. If you want to download the source file, I'll put that link for that in the comments as well. It'll just be a simple rig. I'll just save this file and upload it now, which is no trouble. And yeah, thanks for watching.